Hello, everyone. Welcome to the PIH show. My name is Dr. Angie Siddiqui. I'm a gastroenterologist here in Newport Beach, California, and I'm really excited to be here with you today. Carolina?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Carolina Schneider. I am a registered dietitian specializing in plant-based diets, and I have a master's in nutrition.
Sawyer?
And my name is Sawyer Hoffman. I'm a California attorney, and I'm also a fitness professional, fitness coach, and certified personal trainer.
And our beautiful guest, Jenna. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name is Jana, and I'm 55 years old. I live in Long Beach, California. I have 2 grown sons. I'm an empty nester, just me and my dog here. And I have struggled with IBS my entire life. However, the last 3 years have been significantly different in that my IBS has evolved to something that I don't understand and cannot manage. And I've seen GI doctors over the years, and they want to give me a pill to fix it, but it doesn't fix it, and we know that. Things like Bentyl to help the spasming, take a pill and you'll feel better. Well, that has never worked for me. I've had multiple colonoscopies. There's nothing wrong with me, so they tell me. But over the last year, I had gained 30 pounds, which makes no sense to me because my routine is essentially the same. And gaining weight as a single woman is not a great thing, obviously. As I sit here today talking to you, I woke up this morning with a flat stomach, and now 3 hours later, I am bloated and I look like I'm 3 months pregnant. So I'm miserable most of the time. Going out to eat with family or friends is miserable because they want to order everything and I should share and be able to eat all of this great food. But it's not the case. It's not the case. It's very sad. So I have heard of Dr. Siddiqui, if I say your name correctly, from a sort of a friend, and I've been trying my best to eat plant-based, trying so hard. I'm realizing I can't enjoy the same foods that I used to, but it is a struggle for me. It is a struggle, and I don't know if I have Sibo. I don't know really what's wrong with me. One doctor gave me a round of
Xifaxan?
That well, empirically trying to treat me, and I think I got better maybe for a little while, but I really would like to get to the bottom of this and have my life back.
Sounds like you've been going through so much, but one thing I want to clarify, did you say you're 55?
Yes.
No way, because I look at you and I would guess 30. So either you're lying or you just look really good.
Thank you. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Most women don't lie about their age in that way. So I'm going to have to trust that you really are 55, which is incredible. You're absolutely stunningly gorgeous. So Jenna, IBS is an extremely common disorder of the GI tract, and it's a very chronic problem. So many people will report that back in the maybe 30, 40 years ago, or even 70, whatever. It's like a long time back, they had some kind of a gastrointestinal infection where they realized that they went on a trip to, I don't know, somewhere in the world, like Mexico or I don't know, India, and they had some kind of a gastrointestinal infection. And after that, their digestive system never came back to where it was. And if you study irritable bowel syndrome, you realize that actually people have dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of the gut microbiome. They have this thing called leaky gut or gut permeability, meaning that the tight junctions between the cells are severed. And you know that their pain perception is not the same as it was before they had IBS. In fact, if you take 2 groups of people, one normal people with no IBS, and then you take normal people without IBS, and you put rectal tubes in them, and you introduce 100 cc's of gas, for example, in their colons. The group that doesn't have IBS doesn't have pain, but the group that has IBS, they feel distension and pain and discomfort. So there's something about the nervous system acts differently. And it could be because of some kind of an environmental thing that happened, maybe that infection that precipitated this whole thing. But it turns out that IBS becomes a chronic issue. And it's not something you can eliminate out of your life. However, there are many ways that you could control it, where it's not running your life and it's not controlling your life, where it is basically something that's there, but you're in control and you're not suffering with it on a day-to-day basis. The problem is sometimes you go to a gastroenterologist and they say, oh, go away, there's nothing wrong with you, it's just IBS. What do you mean there's nothing wrong with you? So now I just go home and I'm bloated and I'm gassy, and you just didn't tell me anything about what I need to do as far as my diet. You just didn't even set me up with a registered dietitian to discuss diet. I'm not expecting any gastroenterologist to know all about diet, but most gastroenterologists should have a registered dietitian with whom they have a close relationship to send patients, because I can tell you that IBS patients are suffering. Many of them, they jump from one doctor to another. And when they don't get their answers, they go to naturopathic doctors, they go to chiropractic doctors, then they go to health coaches online and they take detox programs, and they just get worse. It's like a vicious cycle. And then they're like, oh, fine, I'll just go back to another gastroenterologist. Then they get another colonoscopy and another workup. And so it becomes a really bad situation where they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on supplements and that don't work, on blood work that has already been done like 5 years prior. So because they're doctor hopping, right? So it's really a difficult situation. And I don't like it when doctors say, you're fine, go away, you just have IBS. Every IBS patient should be closely monitored by a GI doctor regularly, because people, when they feel all these symptoms of pain, bloating, and discomfort, it makes them think like they're going to die of cancer. They go on Google and Dr. Google takes over and you start like planning your funeral, you know? So what is IBS? IBS is a chronic condition in which case you have chronic pain. Like you said, Jenna, you said that I've had IBS my entire life, but in the last 3 years, it sounds like things got a little bit worse. But it's chronic pain for more than 3 months, and it could be, it should be associated with pain on a weekly basis. And it's usually associated with some kind of changed bowel habits, diarrhea or constipation, or alternating diarrhea and constipation. And even though bloating is not necessarily a sign or symptom of IBS, many people with IBS report bloating, and it's not a diagnostic criteria, but a lot of people with IBS have bloating. And that could be the dysbiosis part that is important to discuss. In the last 3 years, you're doing a lot worse and you've gained a lot of weight. So the question is, have you seen a doctor to make sure that the sudden worsening of your symptoms is not due to some kind of a colon cancer or anything else? Like, have you been worked up?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
But I've done everything else that you talked about, all the thousands of dollars on supplements, the naturopath, the chiropractor, all that. I've done that crazy circle.
Yeah,
I actually thought about showing you all the different things I bought because it's insanity.
Yeah, please do.
It's insanity.
Yeah, please show. I mean, I know people come in with a bag of supplements with, Carolina will tell you they don't work most of the time. So it's like, I read you guys somewhere that IBS patients spend about $11,000 in 1 year, like usually 11,000. That's a significant amount of money to explore their symptoms. And I think that's just really because our healthcare system is broken. And you go to a doctor and they say, oh, you don't have colon cancer, it's just IBS, go away. But now what? What am I supposed to do? I have IBS. And so when you have IBS, some of the red flags have to be ruled out by your gastroenterologist. Number one, colonoscopy should be done, especially after age 50 to make sure, or 45 to make sure you don't have colon cancer. That is a must. If you have any red flag symptoms like blood in the stool, unintentional weight loss, and abdominal pain that's acute, that's not related to the type of IBS abdominal pain, it needs to be explored. So if you're listening and you have these symptoms, please see a gastroenterologist to make sure it's not something other than IBS. But once you get diagnosed with IBS, Jenna, you have got to really focus on some lifestyle modifications, nutrition. You have to eat a healthy nutrition to be able to get your gut to a healthy gut. And there are some, and I'm going to leave it up to Carolina to talk to us about that. You also should have a good fitness program in your life, because we all know that about 30% of patients with IBS also suffer from anxiety and depression. And it's very important to also talk to a fitness professional to incorporate that in as part of your lifestyle. But I also want to talk about the role of medications in controlling IBS symptoms. As much as we don't, and Bentol does not work very well, so I don't know if you've tried anything other than Bentol. Let me ask you this. Do you have constipation, diarrhea, or alternating bowel habits?
I pretty much, like, it's 11:30 in the morning. I have already had like 4 bowel movements today. So,
what do they look like?
Not well, sometimes diarrhea, but most of the time pretty normal.
Mm-hmm.
Soft, normal, not constipated. I really don't have a constipation problem as much.
Okay. And how many bowel movements do you have in a 24-hour period?
Oh, good grief. Well, I've already had 4 and it's this time of day. I don't even know. I spend a lot of time in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Which is like, how could I have gained this weight? Well, I mean, I know stress has caused a lot of this probably too.
Yeah, well, after age 55, there is a change. It could be, significant hormonal changes in your body that could cause that. Again, that goes back to nutrition and fitness and your hormone balance. But IBS, if you don't mind, let's talk about IBS first, because IBS doesn't make you gain weight or lose weight. It's one of those chronic conditions that just, it's like a pain to have on a daily basis. It reminds you every day, but it doesn't cause weight gain. So that's a whole different discussion, and we can talk about that. And Sawyer and Carolina can also weigh in on that. But it's as far as the IBS is concerned, so it sounds like you spend a significant amount of time in the restroom, and sometimes you can have loose bowel movements. Do they look like pudding or watery?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. Do you have any fat globules in there, like olive oil in the water?
No.
I'm asking that because sometimes if your pancreas is not working very well, you will have fatty diarrhea. It's called steatorrhea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a complete blood workup in the last like three or 4 months ago by my internist, and all my levels were great.
Awesome. And have they biopsied your colon to make sure it's not microscopic colitis? Do you know?
No, I've never had that done.
Okay. Have you been ruled out for celiac disease?
I haven't had a colonoscopy in about 3 years.
The celiac disease would just be a blood work, like a blood test. Have they done that for you?
No.
Okay, that's something you may want to request, because it's important that we rule out anything simple like celiac disease. And I'm sure you probably have had it done. You just have to ask the GI doctor whether they ran it. Sometimes they run it and they don't tell you. So just make sure of that. So how often do you have pain? Every day or every other day, or what?
Oh, this is a daily struggle.
Tell me a little bit about your abdominal pain. What happens?
It's just the bloating is what's causing my discomfort. It's not like a stabbing pain or anything like that. It's just a constant chronic bloating discomfort.
Okay, so the bloating causes the pain, the discomfort. Okay, if you have a bowel movement, does that help the pain?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. And when you took Xifaxan, and by the way, for those of you who are listening, Xifaxan is an antibiotic that's used for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And basically, so people with IBS often have Sibo, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and it's a condition where you have an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine where it doesn't belong. And people often report being very bloated after they eat. And so here's the thing with Sibo. Sometimes it takes a couple of rounds of antibiotics to treat it, but at the same time, Jenna, it's important not to keep throwing antibiotics at it because it keeps coming back. So what I want to do is let Carolina talk a little bit about diet. I want to know what your dietary habits are. I want to let her ask you some questions and figure out what you're eating now and what you could do to at least address the dietary factors. And then I can talk a little bit more again about IBS.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Angie. Thank you for all this awesome explanation and teaching us a little bit more about IBS and Sibo, which I think is becoming very common nowadays. We see that a lot. So Jenna, tell me a little bit about have you heard of the low Fodmap diet? Have you tried that? And what things sort of have you done diet-wise to try to address the IBS? And just so sorry, before you go on, I'm just going to clarify for everyone what the low Fodmap diet is. So essentially, Fodmap foods are fermentable types of carbohydrates or sugar alcohols that get fermented in your colon, right? So as you guys may remember from science class, the bacteria, bacterial production, when they when we feed our gut with prebiotics, probiotics, or carbohydrates in general, and fiber, the bacteria uses that as food, and as a result, it undergoes fermentation, and as a result, you have gas as a sort of a product. And these foods, the Fodmap foods, are known to, because they're fermentable, to cause the bacteria to create that gas, right? So when we see certain GI conditions, especially IBS, and there is a lot of discomfort and pain, right? And in your case, there's bloating. We do try the elimination diet, which is the low Fodmap diet, to try to understand what is triggering if certain types of sugars or carbohydrates that are being fermented, if they are triggering those symptoms, right? So just a little brief, and I just wanted Jenna to hear from you. What have you tried? What has worked and what hasn't?
Right. I've really struggled with the elimination diet and the low FODMAP. I've really struggled, I'll be honest with you. I've worked with a health coach, and I've tried very hard and it seems like I have a hard time sticking with the routine. I feel that I'm more successful eating plant-based. I've been much more successful at that. So I've eliminated completely dairy. I've eliminated meat completely. I have occasional salmon or something like that. I occasionally have chicken in a salad, but really, as of right now, primarily trying my best to be plant-based. And some days it's hard. I'm working at home, I'm living at home, and I get frustrated because it's so much meal planning, so much prep involved. And if I'm going out to dinner with family like I am tonight, I'm nervous right now thinking about what am I going to eat? And gosh, I wish I could eat X, Y, or Z like everybody else is, and maybe I will. And then I'm going to pay for that tomorrow. So.
Right, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that, the elimination diet. So I just wanted to clarify for people watching, with the low FODMAP diet, it's a temporary thing. It's never meant to be permanent. What we do, we eliminate these highly fermentable food groups over a period. It could be from 6 to 8 weeks. It could be more, depending on how long it takes. Once you eliminate all those foods, how long does it take for your symptoms to subside and go away? Once that happens, we slowly reintroduce those foods one by one to see if you can tolerate it, right? So one example of these foods, beans, right, legumes. And for as much as I absolutely love and advocate for a plant-based diet, and I've been, plant-based for several years, it's not always for everyone, especially with IBS. If you already have, a condition and you're eating beans, which are extremely gas producing. I love beans. Beans are wonderful, super healthy, but maybe not for you, right? So maybe not the foods that are plant-based and are nutrient dense can cause you a lot of discomfort, right? So identifying the foods is so important. A lot of the healthy plant-based foods like cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, they're wonderful. They're wonderful because they are gas producing, and that's how we see a lot of their benefits. But for you, they might not be great, right? They may exacerbate, they make you feel more bloating because they do that, right? They produce gas. So, and if you do have a condition such as SIBO, which Dr. Andrew would touch more on, that is not going to help. That is going to make you more bloated and more gas and more bacteria, right? And maybe prebiotic foods that are feeding that bacteria perhaps may not be helpful, because if you have too much of bacteria in the wrong place, you don't want to feed them and encourage the growth of bacteria. So for as much as we love here, Sawyer and Dr. Andrew and I advocate for a plant-based diet, we are realistic that this may not work for everyone. And in your case, it may not also, right? So I love that you're trying to plant-based diet, and I love that it's working better than the FODMAP. But if the FODMAP is something you haven't done correctly or for long enough, like you said, maybe you couldn't do it and you're like, forget about this, that might be something to explore again with a dietitian, because the low FODMAP, all it is identifying what triggers the symptoms, right? With IBS, or now it's been used in SIBO in some cases, and it may seem, obviously we need the antibiotics for SIBO, but it's like a complement to that to subside the symptoms. So once we identify those groups, like, hey, I can definitely eat beans and I'm fine, but I can't have sugar alcohols. That just kills me. The artificial sweeteners, I have that. It looks like I'm pregnant, or I get so much pain. So this is the goal of that diet. It's not meant to be anything permanent. Of course not, because you're eliminating a lot of great healthy foods. It's just really to understand what foods can you have, what foods can you not. Because unfortunately with the IBS, it is chronic. Right. So we want to, since this is going to be with you, we want to learn what works for your body, and your body is different than someone else with IBS, right? Your bacteria composition is different. So maybe some people with IBS cannot have beans and you can, right? So understanding what works for you specifically will really take away a lot from this frustration that you're having of, I don't know what to eat. I eat and it hurts me. At least you'll be able to identify, okay, this has beans. I know this is going to hurt me. Let me stay away from it. So this is why the low FODMAP diet can be really powerful, is just helping you understand what works and what doesn't. And after the call, I can definitely kind of guide you more through it if there's something you're interested. Plant-based foods are amazing, wonderful, the most nutritious foods in the world. And you can still have a vegan low FODMAP diet too if you just wanted to try that out. There's definitely great options when it comes to fruits and vegetables. Some that are more high FODMAP, and some that can absolutely be tolerated. So you can still have a very nutritious and balanced diet that way. So with that said, do you feel like you've done it enough to understand what could be triggering? Do you feel the symptoms with absolutely everything that you eat, or have you tried to keep like a food journal just so you can try to find some similarities? Oh, hey, every time I have wheat, it hurts me. Like maybe, if you go back a week and you're like, okay, every time that I had wheat, I had 10 out of 10 pain. Just wanted to understand more about that from you.
Yeah, I do. I have identified some foods that I know for sure are triggers. I have not consistently kept a food journal, and I think that would be something important for me, and to work with a nutritionist, a dietitian, to have that support, I think is what I've really been missing. Because as I listen to you talk, and I've been, trying to be solely plant-based, hit and miss here and there, I have been more gassy, a lot more. And I'm thinking, well, gosh, I know. My friend who went through with Dr. Angie, she said, no, I'm plant-based, I'm symptom-free for a year. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that then, because that's what worked for her. But it's not really working for me, is what I'm gathering after listening to you.
And that's okay. And, everyone's different. And let me tell you, for as much as we love plant-based foods, you may or may not know this, but the only sources of fiber in a diet are from plants, right? Animal products, animal meats have no fiber whatsoever. Right. So the wonderful fiber that actually helps with the weight loss significantly and helps with a healthy gut and helps with digestion and feeding your gut bacteria can actually be working against you. If you're overloading with fiber and let's say not getting enough movement, not getting enough fluid to kind of help that go through, you're going to be causing more pain. Obviously, you're just trying to help yourself, right? Of course, you're trying to do the best for your body. And even these amazingly healthy foods can be harming you because it's a lot of fiber in a plant-based diet, especially if you introduce it all at once. You may experience more bloating, and actually a lot of fiber can cause constipation. We use fiber to treat constipation, but if you have all this fiber and you don't have enough fluids or even movement, which has been shown to really help with constipation, that fiber is just going to sit there and it's going to make it even worse. So you may be thinking, I'm doing something good, but in your specific case, it may kind of be working against you. Not to say that you can't have a plant-based diet, absolutely can. And hopefully, if you can, you should, because that is nutritionally speaking, the best for your overall health. But we have to identify what works for you with your IBS. And, if you find things that don't work, we got to avoid those. If you do want to have them, you just understand that I might have some symptoms, but at least you know where it's coming from, right? It must be so frustrating when you have no idea where all these symptoms are. You're trying to eat different things. Everything is causing you to feel pain. At least if you identify them, okay, here are the foods that will cause me. If I want to eat them, fine, but I know the symptom is going to come from eating them, right? So that identification process is really crucial. And yeah, I would love to hear from Dr. Angie. If you wanted to explore a little bit more on the Sibo, I know Jenna mentioned the bloating looking like she's pregnant. Is that something that we see with just Sibo? Could it be something else?
Well, I mean, there's different types of bloating. Sometimes people come in and they say, I'm bloated, and this needs to be explored by by a good doctor who understands, a gastroenterologist really, to differentiate what kind of bloating you have. There's bloating that is actually subcutaneous fat, and you can pinch it. And you'd be surprised how many people come tell me I have bloating, and when I look at their belly, it's because they've gained weight and they have like about 3 or 4 inches of subcutaneous fat, which goes over the belly. Especially at our age, Jenna, it just tends to distribute around the trunk. And that by definition is not bloating. That's just a little bit of weight gain that distributes itself around the trunk area. There's another kind of bloating where people have actually fluid and water and ascites inside the belly that gives them that distended look. So if you have bloating, you must see a gynecologist to make sure it's not some kind of an ovarian cancer, or your gastroenterologist would tell you that it's not liver disease that's giving you ascites. Another type of bloating is the type of bloating you get with Sibo and IBS, which is you wake up with a flat stomach, kind of like what you explained. And when you eat, suddenly your belly gets distended. And sometimes that's gas and sometimes it's not gas. For some reason, it's like the way I describe it to patients, people with IBS, when they eat, like their bowels kind of freeze, kind of a thing. And even if you're having diarrhea, it's like almost like a dysregulation, like almost like a neurological problem in there, where it's a feeling of distension and an exaggerated feeling of bloating and distension out of proportion to the actual bloating and gas they have. Okay, so it's IBS. It's almost like a neurological problem, right? And Jenna, as much as like lately, there's been a creation of a dichotomy where you have to choose between being healthy and medical care, medical therapy, and there's a lot of medication shaming going on. Sometimes people with IBS cannot go without medications. And I can't emphasize on that enough. If you get, and all 4 of us here understand the power of nutrition and fitness. Nobody would disagree. I know Carolina would agree with me that when someone, and we're all about lifestyle, by the way. So you should talk to a registered dietitian. Don't do this. No one should go on a Fodmap diet by themselves. It's too complicated. You should be under the care of a registered dietitian. But if diet alone doesn't help, assuming your gastroenterologist has done all the correct workup, you should be on some kind of a medication to help your gut, relax your gut. I can't emphasize on that enough. As much as I love lifestyle, there are a group of my patients who would have to quit their jobs and live in the bathroom because they have 30 bowel movements a day, diarrhea. That's not healthy mentally. I mean, it's just, they're afraid to go out of the house. It disrupts their social life. It disrupts their life, and they can't vacation with their kids. One of them called me the other day. He said, I'm invited on a boat. Okay, give me that medication you were talking about. And he actually, I called him back and said, how was it? He's like, oh, it was so good. I went on the boat. I hung out with my friends. It was incredible. Thank you so much. There's nothing wrong with taking a medication that works. The problem is IBS is very difficult to treat. And sometimes finding that medication that works for you to control your symptoms can be challenging. And what I tell my patients is this: hang in there with me. Let's try Bentol. If Bentol doesn't work, we try something else, Vyburzi or something. If Vyburzi doesn't work, we try something else. There's always, not always, but 95% of the time, I will find something that works for you. I would recommend perhaps a Sibo test, especially because you already took Xifaxan and you don't want to keep taking antibiotics. With Sibo, it's very difficult because you can't, for the rest of your life, regularly take supplements and antibiotics. It's not good to kill. It's better to figure out how to control your symptoms where you don't have to be dependent on antibiotics over and over again. Having said that, some people, you need a couple of rounds to kind of reset them. And they stay on a really great diet and they start a fitness program. I have a personal question for you. You can share this with us. If you don't feel comfortable, that's okay. Do you have anxiety or depression?
I think I have some anxiety. I mean, over the last year, since March of 2020, I have been in my home. And during this time period, I'm also going through a divorce. So there's some anxiety. And I think, the last 3 years, when I tell you I've gotten worse to this point, I think that contributing factors have definitely been anxiety and stress. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a huge mind-gut connection. When you get those butterflies in your stomach, when you think of someone you have a crush on or something that happened back when we were teenagers, there's such a mind-body connection. There are some things in your body you cannot control. You cannot control your heartbeat. It's going to beat. You cannot control IBS symptoms. You can with certain mindfulness techniques, but it's not a quick fix like that. When you feel stress, it's gonna translate to stress in the gut as well. So you said something great. You said that you've been trapped in your house, obviously, because it's just been a difficult year for all of us because of COVID. Sawyer, what do you suggest to your clients who are in a similar situation, who are feeling stress and anxiety because they haven't been around, but they haven't gotten out lately, and they may not be getting sun, exercise, or any of that stuff?
Well, I actually have started a program, though. I'll say I've started to help myself since the COVID restrictions have let up. For the past month and a half, I've been going to Pilates 3 or 4 times a week, except for I was in a car accident last week and rear-ended, so I haven't been, for the week, but I have been starting to help myself, and I have a dog that I walk twice a day. So I don't just sit here and do nothing, I promise you.
That's perfect. And yeah, if you have a regular form of exercise that you enjoy, then I'm all for it. And if you use your muscles too. I think when it comes to fat gain and somewhat being like, if it's somewhat of a mystery to you, I hopefully I can elucidate some of that to you. Basically, calories in, calories out is something I talk a lot about as a fitness coach. And you might have heard it before, sometimes physicians will tell you, hey, eat less, move more. That's about as useful as telling a homeless person, hey, save more money. It doesn't really help in the sense that that's not very practical advice. And so what I tell people is I first explain to them, look, you're at a caloric maintenance level, which is going to keep you at the same body weight. Okay, so you're eating a certain amount of calories, going to keep you at the same amount of body weight, right? If you decide, hey, I want to lose some weight. I mean, a lot of people make the mistake of just shooting way down in the calories and their body's just going to scream at them until they eat more calories, and so they end up binging. But instead, what you want to do is set a lower caloric amount that's going to be reasonable for your body to handle and for your to start creeping your weight back down, right? So, but there's a problem, which is that we live in what's called an obesogenic environment. So we live in this world where calories are everywhere and everything you're doing at social involves food, and it's very easy to lose track and not really think about calories. And so one of the best ways you can kind of account for that is you can track macros. You can do that if you're somebody like a numbers person, if you want to journal and you want to associate calories with everything that you're eating. Or you can just focus on things that keep you fuller with less calories. And I'm sure Carolina could explain more about that, but typically things that tend to be more satiating are things like protein, especially plant-based protein, associated with fiber. So protein, fiber, water, and then volume of food. So thinking about caloric density in terms of like, am I going to eat this big salad, which is going to fill me up, or am I going to eat this little slice of pizza, which won't fill me up, but they're about the same amount of calories? You know, so keeping those things in the forefront of your mind when you go to eat and realizing like, whoa, I could get full on 1,200 calories in a sitting, or I could get full on 500 calories in a sitting. And if you do that over the course of a day, you can see how it would start to add up. And so even though you might think, well, I'm eating relatively similarly and I'm not really changing that much about my day. Well, one, you may have decreased exercise recently and that would decrease your energy expenditure. But the other side of that equation is I could be eating similar foods, but maybe are more oily or have more calories associated with them, even though they look about the same portion size. And like, for instance, how many grams of fat does a slice of pecan pie have again? It's something crazy, like 30 something grams of fat or something crazy.
Couldn't tell you.
Yeah, if you didn't know that, you'd be like, oh, just a piece of pie, like it's fine. And you would eat that instead of, you know, maybe something a little bit lighter, like a fluffier cake or something. And you would think, oh, probably about the same, right? No, there's like hundreds of calories worth of difference in those two things, even though they're about the same size. So that's just one way of thinking about things, is like, okay, I have to kind of be cognizant of, be mindful of what amount of calories am I getting on a daily basis. You know, it doesn't mean you have to write everything down. It doesn't mean you have to be a robot, but it does mean that you want to be kind of conscious of, am I eating about the same amount of calories on a consistent basis? Because if I am, my body weight's going to stay about the same. And if I want to bring that down lower, I want to not just use willpower and portion control to change that. Typically, you want to focus on things that are more filling with less calories so that you can bring the weight down slowly and healthfully without having to exercise too much willpower.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Sawyer, also, you mentioned stress, right? I've obviously been through a lot this year. Stress is, you may have heard of cortisol, right? Your stress hormone. When you're stressed, you raise your cortisol hormones, which tells your body to store things as fat. It tells your body to increase fat storage. And that's why we see a lot of metabolic conditions that are associated with stress and elevated cortisol hormone levels. So sometimes it's also what Sawyer said, you know, absolutely. We want to eat filling foods, high fiber. We want to have a balance of protein, you know, the good starches, whole grains, and lots of veggies. And in a plant-based diet, the good thing is if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet that is minimally processed, you're getting a lot of fiber, right? Which in your case may be kind of hurting your IBS, but in terms of weight loss, this is exactly what I suggest to my clients. I actually just talk about high fiber foods all day. Like my favorite nutrient is fiber. So, but beyond your diet, which we can definitely dive in, and I can obviously send you some resources after this. Other things can cause weight gain, right? Like you said, you mentioned your lab work. Like you looked at your thyroid hormones. If you're hypothyroid, if your thyroid's not producing enough thyroid hormones, it is very, very likely going to cause you to gain weight, feel fatigue, right? Lack of energy. And that's beyond your control. That's a hormonal issue that needs to be addressed with hormone therapy, right? That another place where the medication comes in, that there's more, I can't do much when it comes to nutrition recommendations. Of course, I can talk about a nutritious plant-based diet, high in fiber for weight loss, but if your hormones are not in control, that's not enough, right? So there's other factors that we need to think about with this sudden weight gain. Exercise, diet, yes, also stress levels, anxiety, that's going to make your body retain more energy in the form of fat. That's known, right? Your hormones level is to see how your metabolism, right? Your thyroid's responsible for your metabolism. So there are definitely things that could be beyond your control, that you're feeling so frustrated because you're trying so you're trying so much to do the best for your body and eating a plant-based diet. I mean, plant-based diet in a whole food form is probably very likely the most effective way to lose weight over time and in a sustainable manner. That's going to, and when we're talking, just a little disclaimer, guys, when we're talking about losing weight, it's only if someone is overweight to a point that, you know, it's unhealthy, if they have elevated blood pressure or they're more likely to have diabetes. We're not saying everyone needs to be skinny and look in a certain way, by no means at all, but just, you know, maybe if you gain weight, right, could be a combination of those other factors that are beyond diet. So plant-based diet usually is the most effective for this natural weight loss, and natural until your body reaches a stable plateau where you need to be. All of our bodies have a number of calories that it needs to survive. If you're sitting on the couch all day, your body still needs calories to go through all the bodily functions and mechanisms, right? So you want to lose the weight to a point where you're healthy. We don't want to go underweight ever, because we want to support our body, you know, metabolism and mechanism. So keeping in mind that other things could be causing that weight gain, right? Or maybe are you just feeling bloated? Like Dr. Andrew mentioned, is this because you gained the weight? I actually had a client the other day that, oh, I'm bloated, and I described the types of bloating. She's like, no, I think it's because I gained weight and now I have a belly, right? Like, do you have pain associated? So all these things need to be really looked at in a different light, because sometimes it's really out of your control. It could be something else that could be addressed, you know, like the hormone balance, that you could address it with the medication that would stabilize your hormones. And then of course, lifestyle comes in and makes it even better, right? You eat a great nutritious diet and you have a great fitness routine, but all these things could be working against you and you don't even know.
Yeah, Jenna, you're in a very complicated situation, so don't feel frustrated. You just need the right people to help you. You're in a situation where you want to lose weight because you've gained 30 pounds in a short period of time, and you're trying to lose this weight. You're trying to eat healthier and you're trying to eat more plant-based, but your gut is like telling you no, because it's not used to this plant-based load. And you have IBS at the same time. So going on a plant-based diet from 0 to 60 may not be possible for you. You really need help. And you need the help of a registered dietitian to walk you through this. It sounds like you've incorporated exercise in your lifestyle, which is awesome. You just continue doing that, because there's a lot of research on fitness and the advantages of fitness in your health. But totally anecdotal, you guys. I want to tell you something. I have noticed people who gain weight, and they don't just gain subcutaneous fat, which is fat that goes under the skin. They also gain weight mesenteric fat, which goes around the bowels. And they often tell me they have this bloating blah, blah, blah sounds that happen in their belly, especially when they go to sleep at night. Do you feel like these weird sounds in your belly and feel like bubbles bursting in your belly?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, good. Okay, because just to let you know, sometimes you also gain weight around the bowels. It's called mesenteric or visceral fat that goes in your liver and around the bowels, and that really makes you feel bloated. And when you eat, suddenly your belly gets distended. And a lot of times when people lose this or get rid of this unwanted weight, they get so much better with the bloating. So I think you need to focus a lot on lifestyle at this point and get rid of this unwanted weight. And I don't say lose weight because when you lose something, you want to go chase it and get it back. It's getting rid or shedding this unwanted weight, right? Through fitness and through healthy eating. And but it's very complicated for you because you can't just eat a plant-based diet, because you also have this IBS going on, and it's been going on for years. So you really should do this with the help of a registered dietitian, because otherwise I've seen this bad thing happens where people become fearful of foods. They start dreading going out. Yeah. They start getting scared of garlic and onions. They don't know what to eat, and it triggers eating disorders. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to wait till it's too late. I would get the help that you need right now. You already have a gastroenterologist, but you should work with a registered dietitian. But I also want to encourage you to talk to your gastroenterologist about perhaps getting started on a medicine to control the symptoms while you're going through this journey. And whenever you're doing well, you can get off of it. This is not something that necessarily needs to be continued for the rest of your life. But if you told me that your, 20 bowel movements a day is disrupting your life, I would say just to get back to normalcy, take something to help you. It's like, I just broke my leg, okay? I am in a boot. I can't say like, well, I don't believe in medical care. I don't believe in wearing a boot. Well, I'm just going to damage my foot even more. It's the same thing with IBS. If you're having issues with your bowels, maybe you need something to help you through the tough times. And then when your GI tract is doing better, you can get off of it.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, I don't trust my GI doctor anymore, and I'm not seeing anybody. I tried to get in to see you, but like tonight I'm going out to dinner. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to eat dinner, and probably before we leave the restaurant, I'm going to have to run to the bathroom. And that's just miserable. That's completely miserable. And it is triggering some kind of potential eating disorder that could happen, because I'm worried to eat. And I don't know what to eat, and that causes anxiety. So it's a vicious cycle.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't imagine the anxiety of having to go out, and maybe you're even like looking at the menu from home and seeing like, okay, this is where we're going. This is what I could possibly maybe eat. But this is where I go back, and I'm sorry to be repetitive, but this is why, and don't think I'm like, I'm an advocate for the Fodmap diet as a temporary method to help you understand what works and what doesn't. I'm not just saying everybody needs to go on a low Fodmap diet because it's super restrictive. You're restricting a lot of great healthy foods, but it is extremely helpful in IBS and other GI when we just want to, understand what triggers those symptoms. So the good news is that I can say with almost confidence, I'll have Dr. Andrew back me up, is that with IBS, there's definitely foods that you can eat and shouldn't be causing symptoms, right? Once you identify them. So the good news is that there's definitely a lot of foods that you can eat. But what could be happening is that maybe you're eating a meal that's mostly, not harmful to you. And then there's just one little thing, like let's say garlic, for example, which is a high FODMAP food, and it was seasoned with garlic, and there you go, you felt, right? So you could be that sensitive. So this is why the period of, it could be, working with the dietitian on just doing the halal fat, just, telling yourself, hey, I hate this, but I'm going to do this for 6 to 8 weeks really, really correctly and by the book. So I can at least know I can have these foods or I cannot have those foods. Now, when you go out, you're like, okay, well, I know exactly what I can have. Let me tell you. And you go there and they're like, can you make me this? I am that person. When I go out, I'm the vegan one. I'm like, let me make my own meal, because if the menu is not like vegan friendly, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think nowadays it's becoming so acceptable and welcoming for people to have different dietary needs, whether it's by choice or for a health reason. In your case, it's a health reason. So all that more reason for you to really be, empowered when you're asking for a modification. And that restaurants, I think, now are getting better, especially you guys in California, pretty forward with the plant-based movement and so on, and having, allergen-free foods and so on to accommodate for all these dietary restrictions. So once you understand the food that you can and cannot eat, your life is going to become so much better. But I can only imagine with everything you're going through, and if you're in the bathroom all the time, and if you're feeling anxious because you don't want to go out, let's go on the boat because you're going to have to use the restroom, that's taking so much energy from you. That's probably preventing you from trying these different things, or like the low FODMAP or whatever it is, that could actually be making you feel better, but you just have no energy because you're spending all this energy, with the kind of dealing with the symptoms and the kind of the bad complications of the condition. So, the journaling is huge. I do it with so many of my clients, but sometimes they unfortunately can't afford to see a gastroenterologist if it's not in their plan. So, obviously I'm limited. I'm not a doctor. So all I can help with food. So, but we do the low FODMAP really, really nicely, follow it very precisely. They do a food diary and they write it all down. I know it's annoying, trust me, I know it's time consuming, but if you think that that's going to help you in the long term, it's all worth it. So I have clients to write exactly what did you eat and how you felt, how was, how many bowel movements that day, what did they look like, and then pain, your pain from 1 to 10, what was that? Just do that every day, every day, every day. And then after a week, we have all these awesome data that we can look at. And hey, all these days that you were 9 of pain, you ate beans. That's how beans are amazing. I love them. Soluble fiber, amazing properties, disease, lowering chronic disease risk. But maybe for you, they're not. If they're causing you pain, then you shouldn't be in your diet, or they should be limited. So even the healthy foods with IBS can cause that, and with Sibo as well. So can't emphasize that enough. I hope this was helpful. Sorry, it's kind of general, but I would be more than happy to send you, some recommendations. But I do think that working through it and understanding what works and what doesn't will make all the difference for you.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Jenna, do you have any questions?
I know. I mean, you've all just contributed so much of your wonderful knowledge to help me. And I need to start from scratch with the low FODMAP, do the food journaling, and realize that what I've been trying to do isn't really working. And that's why I wanted this call so much today, to figure out, what next. And I'm done with the supplement cycle. I have so many things here that I've tried, and I'm exhausted. I am exhausted. It's a vicious cycle. And getting in with a GI that I trust. And, I have been pretty much anti-medication since the Bentyl didn't work for me, but I didn't even realize there's another alternative. Maybe there's another medication that would help me. I'm so open to that, where I've been.
Jenna, a lot of people are these days very anti-medication, but then they'll take all these supplements. And it's like, there's two problems with that. The problem number one is sometimes you need medicines to help you. And number two, supplements don't have much research behind them. So you could very well be wasting your money. And more importantly, you could actually be hurting your health even more. Mm-hmm. People think that supplements don't have side effects. Well, if you've never put it to the test, you wouldn't know, because if you didn't test it, it doesn't have any side effects, right? It's only when you put things through rigorous testing that they actually have side effects. So, a lot of people do these aggressive detoxes. I have patients who didn't have IBS, didn't have any problems, didn't have Sibo, and they go on these detox programs and they come to me and they develop IBS. Imagine that you were totally fine, but someone told you a detox program would be a great idea. And imagine developing IBS as a side effect of all these supplements. So anyway, there's unfortunately nowadays, there are a lot of people selling stuff on the internet, and you just have to be careful. But hopefully we can help you, Jenna. I will send you some, I know Carolina offered to send you some things to get you started. And I want an update from you. Give us an update on how you're doing.
Okay, thank you so much.
One thing I'll say before we hop off about exercise as well is that don't let anybody convince you that you absolutely need to do like high intensity interval training or something like that might actually be detrimental to your IBS symptoms as a form of exercise, because it blasts body fat or whatever. Really, the most important thing when it comes to the body fat is that caloric maintenance level being underneath it, being in what's called a caloric deficit versus in caloric maintenance or caloric surplus. So if you're in a caloric deficit, you will lose weight, okay? So it doesn't have to be a certain form of exercise, a certain type of food. It can be anything with weight loss, okay? It's more about calories and energy that you're intaking than anything. And then with exercise, I would just say make sure that you're not doing anything to irritate your IBS or to irritate any symptoms that you're having. That should be the number one goal when you're exercising, because you can almost do anything. I mean, there are fit people that do so many different exercise routines. So don't let any trainers talk you into, you need to be doing this or you're going to be gaining weight, or you need to be doing that. You can do almost any form of physical exercise and you're going to feel just fine. It's more about the calories that are
I know. It's like, have you ever been very bloated and someone's like, do like 20 sit-ups and you're like, oh my God, no.
Yeah, that wouldn't be fun. And I think finding finding what you love and what makes you excited, right? So the type of exercise that makes you like Pilates. You love Pilates. My mom would be right there with you. She loves Pilates. She would never let go of her Pilates, and that's what makes her happy. And that's what makes her feel good. And that's, you know, she looks forward to that class. So again, if you're not a person who goes to the gym and does the weightlifting, maybe that's not for you. That's totally fine. Some people love that, like Sawyer, and you know, so many people love going to the gym. They feel good. But if something that's causing you more anxiety and stress, and like, oh, I don't know what to do at the gym, I don't like being here, then that's okay. There's so many other forms of exercise, right? Sawyer, like go climbing, go. You're in California, go hiking, you know, and get some vitamin D from the sun. So don't feel obligated to do a specific type like Sawyer mentioned. And I just wanted to close with something that I try to live by, just keep it simple, right? So when you see, I mean, me and detox are not friends. I don't like that term. The only thing that detoxes your body is your liver. So you can thank your liver. Your kidneys also play a role. So kidneys and liver, thank you for detoxing, but nothing else that you see out there is gonna truly detox. That's just not a thing. Marketing is, you know, it just gets the best of us. So when you see all these complicated or supplements, you know, very holistic, again, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. They're not regulated. We don't know. The FDA does not regulate them. That's why you always see the disclaimer, you know, this is not, you know, this has not been regulated or analyzed by the FDA. So keep it simple, right? So let's understand what can and cannot eat. You know, what types of exercise make you happy. But find a doctor that you trust and that can guide you through this journey, and finding maybe there's a medication that works best. Just keeping it simple. If you see something that's just too overwhelming, it's going to just add on to your stress and your anxiety, which could be causing your weight gain, then, you know, leave that to the side and just keep life simple, and you will find what works for you, and that's what you should stick by.
I love that. Thank you. That's great advice.
Of course.
Thank you so much, everyone, and especially you, Jenna, for sharing your story. And I'm hoping that this story will help other people. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your time and support.
Thank you, Jenna. Thanks for sharing.
Very welcome.
Thanks, guys.